So something I've noticed is that apps, especially productivity apps, tend to prioritize lesser important features instead of putting a focus on forward thinking and innovative features. And they tend to focus on smaller, easier, more outdated, or semi antiquated features. So, in the productivity space, for example, email is one of them. For example, apps will have a special custom email address that you can email tasks to, and those tasks will get forwarded to your inbox. Or they'll have a feature where you can send a task in the task manager to someone else's email address, maybe someone who isn't actually using the same app that you're using for task management. Then there's calendar feeds, so the task will show up on your calendar, or the calendar events will show up in your task manager, or even like an RSS feed for tasks, things like that. Or they'll try to be on like every platform imaginable, so they'll like have a Windows app, a Linux app, browser extensions for every browser. Now, I don't inherently have an issue with an app having those features. I think it's great if they're available on more platforms. And I think it's great if an app has more ways for you to use it. I think it's great that users are able to do more things with that app. However, having priorities in the right order is really important. So let's dive into that. And I'm not against these features. I think it's great if an app wants to be on multiple platforms. I think it's great that they offer different ways to use the app with other apps, vice versa. But yeah, I do think priorities need to be in order. But before we get into that, let's dive into the reasons why app developers are doing this in the first place. Now, I don't have any scientific findings here, but I have noticed that app developers tend to listen a lot more to users when those requests are for features that are a lot smaller and easier, especially if they're features that are already part of the status quo in that space. But when users start asking for more abstract, innovative features, those are the things that tend to never see the light of day. And part of that is that those features are easier to build. I mean, there's a lot of open source code available for common features, so the developers don't actually have to build them from scratch. And the other part of it is that these features, especially if they're part of the status quo in the productivity space, they can be seen in most apps in the space, so it's very easy to see what the final product is going to look like. And I'm sure there's a whole list of reasons why developers choose to not add a certain feature to their app. But I definitely think there are some more other reasons when it comes to building out an app, because it's not just the developers, it really is the product vision. So it could be the founder, of the company. It could be the product managers. It could be a lot of people in the company, depending on the size of the company. And for some app companies, it really depends on who's in charge. But I do think that some of these app companies are focusing on quantity over quality. So what I mean by that is that these companies would rather have a longer list of features, no matter how small or mediocre they are, than a shorter list with more innovative features. So for example, they'd rather have 50 features that are more mediocre than, say, having 10 innovative features. And I mean, I can think of so many apps where I look at their feature lists and I'm like, I don't care about most of this stuff. And I mean, sure, it's nice to have all those features. I'm not against having those features. The point I'm trying to make here is not against the number of features you have or having smaller features that are easier to code. It's that the priority of these companies needs to be shifted to things that are more innovative. And I mean, sure, it's nice to have all those features if you can build them, but I do think the priorities are out of order. And then you have apps that are actually aware of this and they purposely don't do the same thing. But what ends up happening is they start chasing more difficult advanced features that take months and months to build just so they can keep up with their competitors. So basically fighting fire with fire. And then meanwhile, they could have been using that time to maybe build something a little bit more innovative that maybe might have taken just as long to build or maybe even less time to build. But, when they're focusing on the competition, it's very difficult to see those priorities in order. Another reason why apps might choose to avoid innovative features is simply because doing so might require them to change the structure of their app, of their code base, to the point where it would take so much time and so much money to do so. It's much, much more difficult to change the structure of the app. And I could see this happening quite a bit, especially if these innovative ideas pop up later in the app's lifecycle after the code base has been stable and consistently the same for many years. So it's much more difficult to build out these features if they require the app's core DNA to be changed, which is why I think founders, product managers, and developers need to be thinking about their app in an innovative way before any code is ever typed. And these companies don't need to be launching their most innovative features from the get-go. You got to get the app stable first. You definitely got to get the UI to a level where it's pleasant to look at and it runs smoothly, things like that. But once you have those baseline things done, app developers and founders need to start looking at those innovative features very, very early on. And even beyond those innovative features, they really should be focusing on their app's identity. And not just like a simple core identity like, hey, we're a productivity app, we help make people more productive. No, that's way too vague. This kind of vagueness is what leads to developers working on small, status quo industry standard features and chasing the features of their competitors. And I mean, yeah, I agree that developers and app companies should be listening to their users, but they should be building something unique before they scale. And I mean, yeah, I fully agree that app companies and developers need to be listening to their user base. But before they even do that, before they even do anything like scaling, they should be focusing on unique features. They should be focusing on their identity. They should be focusing on creating something that doesn't already exist yet before they do any scaling, anything involving the user base at a major level. And by saying we're going to be better than this app, we're going to be better than this app in the space, that's great. I support that. But it's just not going to bring you all the way there. If you think by adding more features or having the most features means that you're the best app, I mean, maybe that's true for a year or two, and if these developers think that having the most features than other apps in the space is a way to be a better app, I mean, in some ways that is true. It does mean that you are better in some sense, but it's not really bringing you that much further than the competition. And you might only stay in that position for maybe a couple years. So what's going to happen in 3 years, 4 years? Other apps are going to pop up. Your current competitors are going to be adding more features. So it's going to be a constant battle of like who has the most money, who has the most funding, who has the most developers hacking away late at night, and to what end? To get you 2x, 3x what the competition's doing? I mean, you have all these people talking about all this Silicon Valley stuff. They read all the Silicon Valley books and all that stuff, and that's great. And one of them is the 10x rule, and people talk about it all the time. You have all these entrepreneurs, all these developers, all these app founders, and they talk about all this Silicon Valley stuff, all these trends and fads, and some of it makes sense. Some of it is actually worth doing. But then you see their apps and you're like, you're not following the 10x rule. You're not even following like the 4x rule. And it just is really depressing to see that, especially in the year 2020. And I mean, sure, there's definitely a lot of companies, especially service companies, that are very modern, that do follow the 10x rule. But a lot of apps, especially productivity, they don't follow the 10x rule. They follow like the 2x rule. They just make it a little bit better than everybody else. They make it a little bit better than the last couple years, and they kind of stay there for a while. And then other apps add more features, and then they're forced to add more features to their app. And it's a constant like leapfrog game with these app companies. So if you want to make your own app or you want to improve the app you already have, here's my advice. Use creative thinking to foster a vision that goes beyond the status quo. And if you find it difficult to come up with ideas, well, hire someone who's good at that. And if you're still having trouble, maybe you shouldn't be in the app space at all, or at least the productivity space. And remember, the status quo is never permanent. Other companies, other developers will figure out a way to go beyond what we have today. So if that's true, it might as well be you. Sticking with the current state of features, at the end of the day, it doesn't really help anybody. Sure, you might get a lot of upvotes on Product Hunt. That's awesome. Congratulations. Go beyond Product Hunt. Go beyond everybody else in the space and create something different. But yeah, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed my rant. Hit me up on Twitter and Instagram. Check out my main YouTube channel. All links will be in the description below. And let me know if you want me to talk about something specific in a future video. And until next time, I'll see you in the next video.